Hello there, watching Al24 Midnight News coming to you live from Algiers. And to the headlines. Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf arrived Friday evening in Tehran on a working visit to hold bilateral talks with his Iranian counterpart Hussein Amir Abdullahian. As locals and media activists describe the Nablus raid as an invasion, Zionist forces have killed 3 Palestinians on Friday in 2 separate incidents in the occupied West Bank. As he hopes for an extension of the Black Sea grain deal, the Turkish president said that his country has made an intense effort to end Russia-Ukraine conflict, adding that Kiev deserves to be a NATO member. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen urged direct lines of communication for healthy development of bilateral economic and trade ties between China and USA. Hello again and welcome. Algerian initiative reflected by the granting of a $30 million financial aid to help rebuild the Palestinian city of Jenin following the barbaric aggression launched by the occupation forces comes to reaffirm Algeria's righteous and consistent stance towards the Palestinians' cause.
As Algeria has always been at the forefront of supporting the Palestinian cause, once again it renews its constant and unwavering backing for the just struggle of the Palestinian people and their right cause. The President of the Algerian Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has decided to grant a $30 million financial aid to help rebuild the Palestinian city of Jenin, following the barbaric aggression launched by the occupation forces against the city and its refugee camps, and which resulted in the killing of several innocent Palestinians and in extensive material damage.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, decided to grant a financial contribution of $30 million to help rebuild the Palestinian city of Jenin, following the barbaric and criminal attack launched by the Israeli occupation forces on the city and its camp in the West Bank. Algeria once again expresses its permanent solidarity with the struggle of the Palestinian people and their Israeli occupation and their demand for their legitimate national rights, foremost of which is the establishment of their independent state with Al-Quds as its capital.
In the midst of the ongoing geopolitical turmoil that is shaping the entire MENA region and the Maghreb in particular, it is impossible for Algeria to turn its back on Palestine. The President of the Algerian Republic received a written message from his Palestinian counterpart Mahmoud Abbas, in which the latter expressed his sincere thanks and his people's gratitude for Algeria, its leadership, and people for its urgent financial aid as well as its firm positions towards Palestine.
We and our people recognize the firm positions of Algeria, its people and its government towards us, and its political and economic support that you continue to provide to back the just Palestinian cause and its path to freedom and independence. We renew our thanks and wish you health, wellness, and continued success in leading Algeria and its great people towards achieving further progress and prosperity.
Algerians are known for their unconditional support for the Palestinian cause, an issue to which the people and the government of Algeria have always paid great attention and have always taken a principled stance on the side of the Palestinians against the Zionist occupation, a firm and constant stance that are highly appreciated by the Palestinians.
Still in the occupied territories, where another 3 Palestinians were killed on Friday by Zionist occupation forces in the old city of Nablus in the northern occupied West Bank. Palestinian news agency reported that the occupation forces stormed the old city and surrounded the house in Al-Habala neighborhood before executing the targets. Hassan Barkan.
The wounds from the recent Jenin massacre are still fresh, and the mothers of the martyrs continue to mourn. However, the violence persists, as the occupation entity claimed the lives of 3 Palestinians and left 2 others wounded in Nablus. In a heartbreaking act, the Zionist mercenary committed yet another crime. 3 young men, unarmed and defenseless, were executed in cold blood.
Around 8:20, I was at my house. I heard heavy shooting. I looked from the window. The army was shooting from this side and the other side, and called for one man and asked him to surrender. He was telling them that he is unarmed and asked them not to shoot him. The soldier told him, "I won't shoot you." He went toward the left, then they shot toward him. Then they shot both men and then the army withdrew.
The people of Nablus, filled with anger and grief, gathered in the thousands to bid farewell to the 3 martyrs. They solemnly accompanied their bodies to the city cemetery, united in their condemnation of the crimes committed by the occupation army against the Palestinian people. Despite international calls for justice, the Zionist entity continues to shed Palestinian blood with impunity. Its brutal strength, coupled with silence and inertia from the international community, leaves Palestinians in a constant state of fear and oppression.
Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf has arrived to the capital of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Tehran. A statement from the Algerian Foreign Ministry said that visit is part of the directives of the leaders of the 2 brotherly countries, President Abdelmajid Tebboune and his brother, President Ibrahim Raisi, who have common will to strengthen Algerian-Iranian cooperation and partnership. The Polisario Front has affirmed that putting an end to the oppression and exerted on the Sahrawi people by the Moroccan occupier is a necessary condition for launching any political process leading to settlement of the conflict. The representative of the Polisario Front to the United Nations, Abi Bushraya al-Bashir, criticized in a conference at the headquarters of the Human Rights Council in Geneva, the European Union, for not activating the penal code against the Moroccan occupier, accusing it of bias and involvement in the violations imposed on the Sahrawis. The units of the regional group of national gendarmerie in Oran, Western Algeria, announced the dismantling of an international criminal network specializing in smuggling people from Morocco, passing through Algeria towards the Spanish coast. A statement from the Algerian National Gendarmerie Command confirmed that the same services arrested 13 people of foreign nationality and an Algerian national who were about to prepare a secret operation from the shores of Iran with the seizure of sums of money in both Algerian and foreign currencies.
As part of the fight against transborder organized crime, the units of the regional group of the National Gendarmerie in Oran have managed to dismantle an international criminal network specializing in organizing illegal journeys by sea from Morocco, passing through Algeria towards the Spanish coast. This network was preparing for a secret sailing from the shores of Oran. After a thorough investigation and after completing all the judicial procedures in coordination with the competent prosecution, the operation resulted in the arrest of 13 people of foreign nationality and an Algerian national.
In Africa still, the United States ambassador to Mauritania praised the progress made by Nouakchott regarding human rights, particularly in combating human trafficking and violent extremism, during a ceremony organized by the embassy on the occasion of 247th anniversary of the independence of the United States. The American diplomats congratulated Mauritania on the selection as an eligible country for Millennium Challenge Corporation's beginning program. U.S. ambassador also affirmed the continuation of economic partnership between the 2 countries as they are willing to expand it in trade and investment. A source in the Sudanese armed forces announced that the army responded last night to an attack launched by the Rapid Support Forces on the headquarters of the General Command in the center of the capital, Al-Khartoum. For its part, the Rapid Support Forces said that they confronted the military convoy belonging to what it described as rebels in South Darfur State near Kas area. Sudanese Army Commander Abdel Fattah al-Burhan declined participating in a summit with the commander of the Rapid Support Forces, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, which was called for the quartet formed by IGAD organization to end the conflict. The apology comes in light of official Sudanese objections to Kenya's presidency of the quartet committee headed by Kenya and South Sudan, with the members of Ethiopia and Somalia to find solution to Sudanese crisis. The International Organization for Migration confirmed that conflict in Sudan has prompted about 3 million people to flee internally and seek refuge outside the country in less than 3 months. The organization stated that more than 2 million people have been internally displaced, while another 700,000 have fled to neighboring countries. Iranian Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian announced a meeting with his Sudanese counterpart Ali Sadiqi Ali and an imminent resumption of relations between the two countries after a 7-year break. This came on the sidelines of the meeting of foreign ministers on the non-aligned movement countries in Azerbaijani capital Baku. President Zelensky of Ukraine has arrived to the Turkish city of Istanbul. He was then received by his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Following his arrival, the Ukrainian president said in a tweet that the meeting would cover next week's NATO summit, security guarantees, and Ukrainian grain export deal with Russia that Turkey helped broker last year. In the same matter, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Friday appeared to leave open possibility of backing Sweden's NATO candidacy as he reaffirmed his concern, asking how a country with terrorists on the streets can contribute to NATO. Erdogan did not rule out the possibility of giving his green light to Sweden's membership, which he will discuss with Swedish Prime Minister on Monday at the NATO-organized talks.
How can Turkey trust a country where terrorists roam in streets? How can a state that does not distance itself from terrorist organizations contribute to NATO? How those who do not fight terrorism can fight the enemies of the alliance?
The Kremlin on Friday said it would closely follow the results on the meeting in Turkey between Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Ukrainian counterpart President Volodymyr Zelensky. Spokesman of the Russian presidency said Moscow cherishes its relationship with Ankara and acknowledged Erdogan's mediation efforts.
We will be interested to know what Mr. Erdogan and Mr. Zelensky are going to talk about. This is important. You know that Mr. Erdogan has repeatedly made great efforts to resolve various problems in the context of the conflict in Ukraine and has played a mediating role, and this role has been highly appreciated by our President Vladimir Putin. As for the upcoming contacts between Putin and Erdogan, we do not rule out that they may take place in the foreseeable future.
The Russian Ministry of Defense announced rappelling 10 offensive attempts by Ukrainian forces in the Donetsk region, shooting down a Ukrainian fighter in Zaporizhia, destroying 13 Ukrainian marchers and neutralizing more than 820 Ukrainian soldiers during the past 24 hours. All these attacks of the Ukrainian forces in the Donetsk and Lugansk left hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers dead and the number of military vehicles, armed vehicles, and ammunition depots destroyed in southern and eastern Ukraine.
During the past 24 hours, the Ukrainian armed forces continue with their attempts to attack in the direction of Donetsk, Krasnodimansk, and southern Donetsk. The losses of the Ukrainian armed forces amounted to more than 420 Ukrainian soldiers killed and wounded, 3 tanks, 7 infantry fighting vehicles, 4 pickup trucks, in addition to a Polish crop.
The head of the UN Nuclear Agency, Rafael Grossi, said on Friday his agency was making progress on access to Zaporizhzhia, but there had been some limitations. As he wrapped up his 4-day visit to Japan, he stated that the agency is pushing for access to the roof of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine, following reports from Ukrainian officials that the Russians has planted explosives there.
There have been some limitations, and now we are making progress. Of course, they argue that it's a war zone, etc., which is not untrue. But we have explained to them that without us getting all the access we need, we can hardly explain to the international community what's going on. They say that they are being responsible, etc., so we need to see. It's a tension there, in the literal sense of the word, not in a negative connotation. It's a give and take.
And a different matter now, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Friday urged direct lines of communication for healthy development of bilateral economic and trade between the two nations. This comes as the United States is seeking to improve relations with China. More with Nabil Khazini.
The long-anticipated trip of the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to the Chinese capital has shown that the Biden administration is keen to inject some stability to its relation with China. That balance in dealings between Beijing and Washington seems to be necessary for the United States. This was clearly manifested when the U.S. Treasury Secretary said during her visit to Beijing that any separation between both sides would have a destabilizing effect on the global economy. She said that while she is in Beijing on a tough mission to stabilize a fractious relationship.
I've made clear that the United States does not seek a wholesale separation of our economies. We seek to diversify and not to decouple. A decoupling of the world's two largest economies would be destabilizing for the global economy, and it would be virtually impossible to undertake.
China traditionally serves as the world's factory. The US is its biggest consumption engine. This makes the two superpowers as integral partners in many ways. Trade between the two countries remains extremely strong. US imports of goods and services from China hit a record $563 billion last year. China is one of America's largest lenders and holds nearly $1 trillion of US debt.
We on both sides need to be determined to try to make the greatest amount of progress to communicate as effectively as we know how, and do it now, because the current is going to get stronger as the election approaches.
Despite all of this, tensions between the US and China have escalated in the last few years. Ties between the world's top two economies have sunk to their lowest point in decades, with disagreements over topics ranging from trade to Taiwan.
The European Court of Human Rights sentenced France on Thursday for holding more prisoners than capacity allows in prisons. 3 ex-prisoners in the south of Paris won their case filed against France due to the intensity in the prisons where they were held from 2016 to 2019, according to the decision that's announced by the European Court. Mohamed Khatou.
Human rights and France often met in the streets of Paris and at the tables of politicians, either for racist practices of the security services or to condemn them. The European Court of Human Rights shed light on French violations, this time from inside prisons where it holds more prisoners than capacity allows. Condemnations of international organizations for the human rights situation in France are mounting, and the largest judicial body in Europe condemns the situation inside France's prisons and compels Paris to pay a fine, in a case filed by 3 former prisoners against the French authorities over a large number of detainees put in cramped prison cells, in addition to the humiliation and inhuman treatment they were subjected to.
The European Court of Human Rights unanimously agreed that there is a violation of Articles 3 and 13 of the European Convention on Human Rights. The case relates to the conditions of detention in Fresnes prison. The court decided that France will pay an amount of $50,000 to the plaintiffs.
The European condemnation followed the critical situation in the country in the wake of violent protests triggered by the killing of the French-Algerian teenager called Nail by the French police in the suburbs of Paris. A crime described as racist, pictured and evidenced by citizens, after which the spokesperson for the United Nations High Commissioner called for the necessity of addressing the problems of racism rooted in the ranks of the French security services. Except for the racist practices committed by the French security forces in public, France is also involved in human practices and violations against its own prisoners.
Mark Rutte, the Dutch Prime Minister, will hand in the resignation of his cabinet after failing to agree on measures to curb immigration, according to Dutch news agency. The ANP quoted sources as saying Rutte's fourth coalition government collapsed as it was unable to agree how to limit the number of asylum seekers in the Netherlands after 3 days of tense negotiations. Ending up with the sport, the Turkish upcoming star Arda Güler finally managed to pick up a choice after so many offers were made to him, including the Spanish giants Real Madrid and Barcelona. Güler signed a 6-year contract with Real Madrid coming from Fenerbahce, and according to the Turkish media, the talented player reached an agreement with the Spanish club worth over 20 million euros with an extra 10 million in addition fees.
Real Madrid has an important heritage. Cristiano Ronaldo, he is a legend. Everyone knows him. Mesut Ozil, Zinedine Zidane, Guti are players who I have always had in my mind. I want to be like them. I want to become a legend of this club. I want to be part of its history. There have been many clubs who have presented their intention to sign me, and we have been in touch with several teams. But then Real Madrid came with a serious offer, and they told me I was going to be able to play, and so the rest of the offers lost all their value for me.
Wishing him the best of luck in his career. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for being with us in this late hour. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform as is seen on the screen. And all I can say, at the end, take care of yourself. Good night.